Hello, welcome to our series on Roman women. I'm Amanda Hart, the Roman Baths Manager, and in this series we're going to be exploring what evidence we have for Roman women in Bath. Today we're going to be looking at inscriptions that we find on tombstones. Roman tombstones are quite rare. Given that there were 3.6 million Roman people living at the end of the 4th century in Britain, you would think there would be more of them. But there's only a few hundred that survive. So they're a really vital source of information for us about people. They can tell us people's names, where they came from, and possibly what they did. Of those that survive, there are more military tombstones than civilian. And there are more tombstones that refer to men than women. So actually, when we do find tombstones that talk about women, it's very intriguing and they can tell us lots of information. This first tombstone refers to a woman. You can see she was called Rusonia Aventina. And she came from the Mediometrici tribe, which is in the present-day Metz in France. This tombstone is quite large, which in itself tells us something about this woman, perhaps about her status and being quite important. She was 58 years old, which is quite an age for a Roman person, and her heir put this tombstone up, and he was called Lucius Ulpius Cestius. What we don't know is what their relationship was, because he's clearly not her husband. But what I find fascinating is that she came all this way from France to Aquae-Sulis. So what was she doing here? I mean, she was an immigrant and she was clearly living here at the time of her death. But was she a pilgrim, coming here to visit the great bathing complex and temple of Sulis Minerva? Or was she coming here to visit the baths because she was unwell? Or was she married to a merchant who travelled here following the army to set up a stall selling his wares? Archaeologists find tombstones at cemetery sites, but also they turn up in later buildings. Quite often they were reused in Roman buildings, and sometimes the city walls themselves. Here we have a tombstone, and the inscription tells us it's of a young girl. Her name, Merc, is a shortened version of Mercatilla. And we know that the person who put this tombstone up was called Magnus. And this L here is key, because that tells us that he liberated her. That means that she was born a slave, which quite often happened in Roman time. If you had slaves in your household that became pregnant, when they were born, they would be born slaves. We know that she lived to be 1 year, 6 months, and 12 days old. She died so young that whoever did this tombstone thought it was important to put exactly how long she lived for. We also know from this word, alumna, that she was fostered by Magnus. So he took her on after freeing her, and then really sadly, she died. So the question remains, why did he foster her? Was it out of love, or was it for more selfish reasons? Did he actually want to take on a daughter who could help within the household, maybe help him into his old age, or maybe to become an apprentice, to learn a trade? We'll never know the answer to that. With this tombstone, it's the woman who's commissioned this tombstone to be put up. Her name is Calpurnia Tryphosa, and there's a story to be told here. This is the tombstone of the priest at the temple of Sulis Minerva. His name was Calpurnius Receptus, and he is sacerdos, the priest of Sulis. And he lived to be the grand old age of 75. So that just goes to show you, with a high standard of living, just how old you could live to be in Roman times. Tryphosa is a Greek name and actually means tasty. This tells us that she was a slave. Quite often, slaves were given Greek names and also pet names like delicious. So in marrying Calpurnius Receptus, Tryphosa gained her freedom. So this means that the priest of Sulis Minerva at some point went to market to purchase himself an enslaved woman. And then he married her, and she then took on his name. In this instance, Calpurnius becomes Calpurnia. So Calpurnia Tryphosa. But what this tombstone doesn't tell us is anything about her life, how old she was, where she came from. I mean, was she local? And we don't know the answers to these questions. Some people like to see Calpurnius Receptus almost as her saviour, rescuing her from the market and marrying her. I see it slightly differently. I often wonder what her life really must have been like, to have been a slave sold in a market into a marriage that would she have really wished for? And we just don't know. Thank you for watching this film about Roman women. I hope you enjoyed it. What topics would you like to hear next? Please leave a comment below.